Welcome to the Solo CEOs, the podcast for solopreneurs by solopreneurs. Here we celebrate, commiserate, and problem solve all the world's craziness that comes with building a business on your own terms.
I'm Marilyn Johnson, a supplier development and supplier diversity consultant.
And I'm Tara Winston, executive coach and leadership consultant. And we are the Solo CEOs.
Yay! Hello, everybody. So today, Tara, what are we going to talk about?
Money.
Money.
We're going to talk about... Actually, what?
We are not going to give away money. We're going to talk about what?
How much can I charge?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that we figured we hit it early because that is the number one question that someone asks when they are, number one, starting their businesses. And let's be honest, you want to know a secret? Let's still talk to people who have been in the game 15, 20 years, and we are still comparing notes on what to charge for new services, new clients, and new situations. So there is a perpetual question: how much can I charge? I think we should tackle that.
Exactly. So, Tara, why is pricing so doggone hard? Let me just say this right now before I forget. I remember when I was going to B school, and the number one thing they kept talking about pricing is charge as much as the market will bear. Mm-hmm. Heard that one before? And I would sit there and I'd be like, well, how the hell do I know what the market is bearing and who the hell is bear? Like, what is that? And that was when I was in corporate. Your competition doesn't tell you their prices until they price it, especially as a consultant. So, I mean, what did you hear? Am I the only one that was wondering, what is this clown talking about?
No, I mean, they're absolutely in business school. It was, whatever the market will bear. But the idea that there's any transparency in a marketplace is absolutely ridiculous. And when you do, for most solopreneurs, a lot of us are service-based organizations, or even if you're product-based, I can't go and can I compare how much a massive multinational corporation is charging for the same service or products and compare it to mine? And I can't survey all 18 million other executive coaches out there to see what they're all charging. Oh, by the way, they're charging some of everything. So what can the market bear? All the things. It's it's not good information at all.
Right.
And it's stressful. And then you go and find some of those books, right? And the books always have a really cool formula that makes no sense to anybody but them because they think
that's
because
they're in the business of selling the book to people who are struggling, trying to figure out how much do I charge. But let me tell you, this is yet another story in Maryland Chronicle of building a business. I remember when I first started out, I didn't know what to charge. I never thought I was going to start a business, let alone I'd never been a consultant. So I started hanging around people that I thought were smart. And I had lunch with this one lady, and she was a professor, and she had her own business. And we was talking about pricing, and just like everything else, sometimes you're a little bit hesitant to ask people, now, how much you charge? And especially when they're not your relatives, and even relatives, you don't want to ask that. So I'm sitting there and I'm talking to this lady, and finally I just busted out and said, listen, I'm trying to figure out how much I should charge. And how much do you charge? And you would have thought I had slapped her mama. She was like, well, that it just depends. And I'm saying to myself, bitch, I didn't ask you your social security number. I just wanted to get an idea for how much you charge and be truthful. Anything that's meant for me is going to be for me. And anything that's meant for her was going to be for her. Do you know, this is 20 years later and I still don't know what that lady charged. She danced and she danced. I mean, Tara, have you had it where I just came out and asked because I just had no idea. Have you asked, and what was some of the response and reactions that you got? Because I think that woman think I really had slapped her.
Well, wait a minute. And somewhere right now, she's on a podcast telling the same story. Like, can you believe this couple asked me how much I charge for stuff?
Right. She's like, she should know. Yeah,
Still
right.
clutching her pearls. Not,
Mm-hmm.
so I like, because when you first start, you really don't know anything. And I, for the most part, I've had some really great people around me that are willing to pull me aside and say, look, let me tell you, this is what I tend to charge, and this is why. But there is a lot of kind of secrecy, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
combination of I don't want you to know, because I don't know if it's a good price, right? Like I'm a little ashamed of this number, or maybe I think this number is too high. Like there's just so much uncertainty, and I think, to your first question, like why is it so hard? Is we oftentimes kind of have this connection to our own value is connected to the number, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it too
Yeah.
high? Is it too low? What does that say about my quality? Am I communicating the right thing? And then you've also got fear on the other side that if I quote something that is too high, then I'm never going to get good work. I'm going to shell shock this client that I'm trying to get to. I can't recover from it. And Lord knows I'd probably be willing to take less if I had to. I just don't want to, right? So you've
And
got
we
all.
definitely not trying to leave no money on the table. Tara, you make it
Ooh,
sound so nice, but real straight. I'm not trying to just leave any money on the table. So it's hard. It
what,
is
what,
so hard.
right? So my fear was like, no, I don't want to leave any money on the table. And for anyone who's listening right now who has not started, the worst feeling in the world you think is a no from the client. Uh-uh. The worst feeling is when you give them the proposal or the number and they go, oh, cool, sure. That's the moment you know that they could have taken more. Like,
Yep.
you left money on that table when they
Mm-hmm.
happily accept your number.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of want it to be a little bit, a little bit difficult, so that you know that you've got as much as you can. But the honest answer, I think for me, like I don't want to leave money on the table, and for a lot of people, and I'm one of those people, also the money is hard. I don't know, it shouldn't be. I know it's just exchange of services. Like I don't feel any kind of way when I go to the grocery store and they ask me to pay for my groceries. Like I get that. But for some reason, like I had a really big hurdle when I first started of asking for money. And Marilyn knows this because we partner on things, and all the time when it comes to asking for money, I'm like, and she's usually like, give me $5. Um,
Yes. Where is my money?
it's not money.
Yeah, we have
But
one client in common that he gets that question asked off, and Tara's like, well, everything's fine. No, it's not fine. I need my money. You're late on the invoice. I need my money. I
I
need to
need my
eat.
money. Right. Yes. Marilyn is also known as Fornical Vinny, uh, because she takes out kneecaps every once in a while. But so I do. I think you end up having those two sides, right? It's hard because you don't want to leave money on the table. It's also hard for the people that sometimes feel uncomfortable, even with that part of the sales cycle, and the service cycle. And it's a moving target. Like the answer is no matter what you sell, there is someone that is selling it for no money and doing fine and is comfortable with
Mhm.
that. And there's someone that is selling it for more money than anyone humanly should pay for it. And someone's buying it.
And somebody's buying it. You just got to
Hmm.
figure out if the customer you're talking with is that person that's buying it. But let's move forward to, so how did you even set your price?
Mm, okay. So I had a leg up, I think, on a lot of people because I had spent the early part of my career in management consulting, right? And so in a big management consulting firm, they are charging out the consultants, and you have a bill rate. And so so you already know. So I knew for a fact that with no additional information in my brain and no experience out, outside of
Mhm.
college, that a big company was charging $200 an hour for me, who knew nothing. Right. So I had a baseline that I knew, okay, like companies are willing to pay this kind of money. Now again, there's so much that goes into it. They don't always know they're paying that rate for that person that knows
Mhm.
nothing. And it's blended into a lot of other factors. But that became kind of my baseline to say, all right, so how do I pivot around that, knowing that consulting can garner that type of money? That's not even for someone with more experience or even a partner. So I kind of started there. I think the other
Mhm.
thing that I did, again, because I'm that chick that reads those books that we talked about.
Mm. I ain't
Um,
read
when
not
I
one
when I
book.
no, you did not.
Mm-mm. No, I did
Um,
not.
but so like the idea, like one of the formulas that's out there that I Don't love it all, but I'm gonna tell you about it anyway. It's basically you go back and you calculate your old salary, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you came out of a job, you calculate your old salary. The one thing that's always a reminder is you have to put in a little bit of an extra percentage because of your benefits, right?
Your
So
load.
typically, right? So typically you take your salary, add 40% because of your benefits, and then you actually calculate it, calculate the number of hours you would work, including incorporating your vacation time, right? Because that's the other thing people miss. It's not you don't work 52 weeks. You actually have vacation time and how much vacation time you want. That number ends up giving you a minimum, right? So if you charge anything lower than that, and now remember that's assuming that you will work all those hours all the time, which does not make sense
Mm.
in your own business because that gives you no time to do any business development, right? So I knew that somewhere between like what this consulting gig at a big scale would deliver and my minimum is where I would start. And then I started like you asking people.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, you had a very scientific and methodical way of doing this. Believe it or not, so did I. I did have a spreadsheet, but the way I figured it out was as crazy as it was that I didn't know how much to charge. I did manage to get a customer. I think he wanted to date me, which is probably why he agreed to hire me. But anyway, um, and he came up with the number, and I was like,
Mm,
oh, okay. And it was so interesting because he was an electrical contractor. He bid on large contracts with the city, and he worked with unions, and so he was an hourly kind of guy. And
mm,
he told me how to do it. He said, I looked at how he would bill his customers. And so I did just what you said. I looked at what I wanted to make, basically what my net was, because when we
mm-hmm,
work in a company, you take home say $100,000, but that is the money you put in your pocket. That's not all of the benefits, and that's where I think a lot of people short themselves because they say, well,
mm-hmm,
I want to make $100,000 because that's what I made in the last job. Well, actually, if you want to make $100,000, you need to charge a lot more than that $100,000.
mm-hmm,
A friend of mine used to be a consultant, and she also, between my client, the contractor, and my friend who was a former consultant, she told me the golden number was 2080. She says, never forget it. 2080 is the number of hours that you work a year. How, or let me say this, the number of hours that can be worked a year. But like you said, Tara, you got to take out the time for vacation and whatever else you want to do. And then she said, let's be reasonable. Unless you are going 90 miles an hour, you're not going to work those hours. You're just not going to work that
mm-hmm.
many hours a year. You don't want to work that many hours a year. And so I sat back and I built this whole spreadsheet. And what I call the load was just what you said, my health care, all of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff that you get from your corporation, whoever was hiring you, I baked that in, but I baked it in at 60%. So 60% of what I wanted to earn, I added that on to it. And then I divided it by 2080. And that's how I came up with an hourly rate. And it freaked me out because I didn't know that it was that. Like, I was like, oh my goodness. So, what this is saying is, I need to charge $300 an hour to get to where I want to be. And so I did, it was so crazy to talk about how we don't value, or not we, but
Mm-hmm.
some people don't value the tools that you have. I started scaling back. Well, I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't want to make I didn't want to
Yes,
make
I do
this
the
much.
same thing.
Right.
Oh
It's
no.
like, well, I was making, I forget because it was a while back. I was making this much, but maybe I could survive on $15,000 a year. Like, it was crazy. And then I took that 15,000 and I just kept going by $5,000 increments until I got to the ultimate number that I wanted. And I kept looking at that hourly number like, who in the world is going to pay for this? And then it took me a long time to realize that people pay for talent. But if you don't
Mm-hmm.
come from a consulting background, you don't know that these consulting firms are charging this. You have no idea. Terry, you had a leg up. You kind of had the start, you knew. But break the spreadsheets out and be real clear on what you want to make, and then be unapologetic once you've come up with your number. I'm not saying that your load percentage should be 60%, because Tara, please tell me if that's high.
It doesn't have to be so I think
Mm-hmm.
40 is the minimum. 40 is the absolute minimum. But I
Mm-hmm.
think, but particularly given the way our world is now, I would not be opposed to 50 to 60%.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about that, you're saying if you want to make $100,000 take home, you need to charge what? $150,000.
Mm-hmm.
Divide that by 2080, and there's your hourly rate. And you're not gonna make it because 2080, or is it 2060? I forget. Well, anyway, you ain't gonna make it because you're not gonna work that many hours. So then there we go with the scale again to say, well, if
Mm-hmm.
I don't work that many hours, then I need to tick my number up, because maybe I only want to work 1,500 hours a year. So then what does that look like? But there is a
Mm-hmm.
little formula there that you can at least start with. And I don't know what your special vice is, but when you do it, make sure you have it there so you can take a sip of wine, or like, dang, I didn't know I was worth that much, or man, I'm really being underpaid. Either way.
Mm-hmm. Either way, and that number, right? So like the first time you actually look that number in the face, you're like, oh, good Jesus, is anyone going to pay for this? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that the way that my pricing has changed over time has been a little bit of response to that, right? So I think all of us kind of start off with what does my hourly rate need to be, and I think you quickly start to realize that billing by the hour, if you're not an accountant or a lawyer or some of the professions where that's already kind of baked in as an expectation, billing by the hour really does you a disservice. Number one, I am lazy. I don't want to calculate every minute I'm on something. But it
Mm-hmm.
also by billing by the project, I don't have to disclose that, oh, by the way, I'm charging $600 an hour for this one thing. Even though like it completely makes sense, it's what it's required to get over the finish line. Not everyone can actually process that, but they can process, you know, a full lifetime or a project cost that they can then set up in their budgets very easily. And so I start to switch over from hourly to project-based costing, or fees, as a way to manage, number one, my workload, but also to kind of help with communicating the value of the work beyond just the hours I put in.
Right, right. The hourly billing is just a pain in the butt. It's just
Hmm.
an absolute pain in the butt. I remember I had a client, and they didn't want project based pay. They wanted hourly. But I don't think she realized what she asked for, because here's how hourly works. Hourly means the minute I leave my house, your clock starts, because I'm going to work for you. And so I charge even transportation. It's like, it take me an hour to get there. Well, shoot, you shouldn't have been so far away. Like, you should have been able to have this a conversation on the telephone as opposed to having me come in. If I had to fly somewhere, oh, the minute I left my house to go anywhere on behalf of you, I charge that as well.
So
And
that's interesting, right? Because the question
mhm,
of whether or not you bill for travel time
oh,
is one that comes
absolutely.
up often. I don't bill for travel time. I bill that into all the things that I do, but I know plenty of people, facilitators,
Mhm.
consultants, that actually do also bill for separate travel time. So Marilyn, do you always bill for travel time, or is it in certain circumstances?
So when you started talking about what has changed, I no longer do hourly billing. Period. I just
Yeah.
don't do it, because number one, I'm lazy, but two, too often our customers go into shell shock. When they start to see, oh my goodness, it costs this much for her to do this. And then they want to pick at everything that you have or you haven't done. And everybody wants to assume that they know how long it takes you to do something. Like a friend of mine says, the one thing he hates is people say, oh, well, it should only take. He's like, well, if it should have only took, you should be the one tooking it. So it's that. So I don't do hourly at all. But I'm in a space where I can charge for project based, and then that way I don't have to think about it. And more importantly, my customer isn't flipping out about it because every month my bill is the same. And people like that because number one, they see the results, and they don't feel like they have to tick mark my actions. So yeah, no, I don't do hourly, but I understand those who do. In certain professions, it makes sense. But for what I do, plus I don't work regular hours.
Yeah.
I don't, I have more than one customer, and I'll work different projects all in the same day. And so now I'm trying to figure out, okay, I start working with Tara at 2:30. So stop the clock there. And then I'll start working with John at 2:35. And that's way too much. That's too much confusion.
Yeah, I have one or two products or services that are hourly based. I would say honestly, usually those are things that are for me B2C. So if individuals are buying something, like to make it more reasonable for them, I'll do my hourly, but I don't typically do it for corporates. Um, and for anyone who actually likes hourly, that that does not mean that you can't charge a lot. I actually have a really great friend who's an executive coach. He charges hourly. In fact, his hourly rate is on his website. He's booked up from here to eternity. And on his website, it actually says, I charge this much. And y'all, I had to cough. I read it. I was like, oh. And I know he's good. And I still coughed a little bit when I read it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like for him, it is part of a sales process of like, look, you already know this is high value. You can pay it. These are the only days and times I tend to work. And before you even call him, he's already
Mm-hmm.
done qualifications of his leads in that kind of way. So don't feel like if you want to do hourly that it means that it's going to be a lower rate or you can't do it. It's just something that both Marilyn and I have chosen not to do. My one watch out for you, if you are going to do hourly, and it's not something like coaching, which is like we start at the beginning of the hour, we end at the end of the hour, and then you go away from me. If you're doing consulting and hourly, you've got to factor in the fact that all them emails they send you in between, that's time. Like your clients are always sending like, hey, can you read this? Hey, can we schedule this? Like all that needs to be accounted for, or else you're really leaving money on the table. And those are the things, to Marilyn's point, when they feel like it only takes this much time, but I had 15 emails back and forth in between our last meetings. That has to be accounted for some kind of way.
Exactly. So Tara, I love to do TikTok well, not do TikTok, but watch TikToks when I have nothing else to do, which is very rare. So I'm usually on TikTok at some insane hour, just trying to decompress from the day. This one guy I follow, he said, and this is so true. He says, you as a business person, consultant, a business owner, cannot create your value based on someone else's budget.
Mm.
He said, just because that's what
Wow.
you know what charge what you charge, and not everybody is supposed to be your customer. And I truly believe that not everyone is supposed to be your customer. First off,
Okay.
you probably don't want everybody to be your customer because some people are
No.
not the same kind of customer. But then second, that's the expectation that we have. He said when you go into buy an expensive purse, when you walking in the door, you're buying an expensive purse. I've been told for certain things that I am expensive,
Mhm.
but everybody who works with me can say they got what they paid for. Many of them got awards. So yeah, I think I'm kind of
Well,
worth it.
okay, you talking a big game, Miss Flashy. I'm worth it. Have you
Girl,
ever
please.
have you ever taken it like had a price but taken a cut to get a client?
I don't remember. So
Oh
here
man, are you?
have
Is that
I.
I plead the fifth?
I don't so I normally my price is my price. But I will say this. There have been times when sisters have been broke and the price has not been as expensive. But that was way in early on when I was trying to establish myself. But yeah, no, now so I think too time has helped.
Mm-hmm.
But if you feel committed to what you're doing, and I have taken some loss leaders where I knew that I wasn't going to make money off of one thing, understanding
Mm-hmm.
that the next thing was going to be bigger and better. So that if that's that might be a yes, but I still made up in the end.
Okay, so this is where Marilyn and Tara are different. And I would tell you that all my friends are like, you should be more like Marilyn. Because I have absolutely given discounts in all kinds of directions. I have like sometimes I just really love working with an organization, right? With some of the work that I do, it could be a really cool project or someone that's doing great things. And their budget and my pricing just doesn't align. And I've made decisions at times that I'll do it for the love or I'll do it to learn or just because it's interesting.
Are these people
Um,
your friends? Because I have done it for our friend where
no,
when she was starting, it was like, I'm not charging you nothing.
no,
Girl,
this
if they
like
not my friend, oh, hell to the no. Mm-mm. No, I don't know you like that.
I have at times. Like I'm like, I like your
Mm.
mission, so okay, I'll take a little bit of cut.
Girl, they
I'm
can
right here.
change that mission with an eraser.
I'm saying this right answer. I'm saying this is my truth. Whatever, man. I will not be shamed. Shamed
I
by
am
you.
in the
Uh,
game to earn a living, not make whole bunches of friends.
but what I will tell you, right? Like, so my advice for anyone that is like me, that at times like you got a solid price, but you squishy on it. So like one thing that I will do is I will always set up my proposals for my full rate. And then I will offer a discount from that rate because even if you're paying less than what the official price is, I don't want you going around telling everybody it's worth this lower amount or telling anyone else they can get that same rate. And so what you'll see is full price with a discount of, and then this is the resulting rate as a way to make sure that it doesn't create a precedent that I can't manage. And yeah,
Okay.
okay, if y'all for those of you who are on the podcast, because the podcast is an audio medium, you cannot see Marilyn looking at me all crazy. But if you're watching on YouTube, this chick is looking at me like I'm
Because she
speaking
she's
Swedish.
crazy. Yeah, no. But Tara, on our call the other day, you did get your hand slapped for your pricing. Listen,
Yes.
everybody, we again have been pricing ourselves with different projects for years and
Mm-hmm.
we still struggle. So if at any point in time you look and you go, why is this so hard? Every time I do a proposal, I have to sit with that number. And here's what's funny. I do it based off of the rate, the hourly rate. Well, actually it still always boils down to the hourly rate, but I do it based off the hourly rate, the number of hours I know it's going to take me. And depending on what it is, there's tiered pricing. And then I sit with it and I look at the number to see, does this make sense? I don't expect that somebody's going to pay a solopreneur the same amount of money that they would pay a multi-billion-dollar organization for what I do. But I do sit and look at the number to see, did I short myself? Because too often we short ourselves. And Tara, there's such a thing called scope creep. You
Mm-hmm.
have to make sure that you cover that. You
Mm-hmm.
always have to make sure. I have yet where I've had a customer and there was zero scope creep. There's usually There's usually some creep somewhere. So here's a wonderful thing. In all this time, I've only had one customer where I was like, I absolutely refuse to go any further with you.
Mm.
I typically enjoy every single one of the people I work with because they're doing stuff that I know is important to them, and it
Yeah.
reflects the work that we believe in. And so for me to be able to work even more with somebody who has a common view of developing people, oh, absolutely. I love to stay around and do it. Yeah, you got a little scope creep, but you also got to make sure when you're doing that big number that it definitely includes that. Because Tara, you have people that's creeped up one street, down the other, and I'm like, well, when you gonna stop them from creeping?
I'm
Did you?
feeling
And then,
very accused. I
mm-hmm,
feel
and then
like
you get
judgment,
that. Did you
Marilyn.
charge them? Well, yeah, and everybody
Uh,
sitting around the table with fancy outfits and red bottom shoes. Yeah, hello,
So
stop.
Marilyn is referring to, you know, like if you know us, like we are solopreneurs, but we also have teams of people that support us that we work with because you can't do this game alone, and we don't recommend that you do it alone. So we were having a
Not at
meeting
all.
with our combined team, and I was getting my booty handed to me by my team about like me being too nice, and so that's what she's referring to. And again, often at times, the same people that will tell you that they don't have budget for more will spend that same amount of money budget on something else that you realize is not you and isn't as valuable as you. And so, Mary, actually, I want to counter something that you said.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
actually believe that that you should absolutely feel that you can charge the same amount as they would pay a multinational corporation. They
Yeah,
may
you're
not
right.
feel it, but there are plenty of times when um, this actually may be another podcast, right? The fact that your quality, what you deliver, the way you customize it, the way you fit it, all those things may actually be much higher. Like I've seen so many examples when what we deliver is on par, if not exceeds what they would get from one of these big old institutions.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be laminated, but in terms of the quality of it, absolutely. And so I want to give, in case y'all needed my permission, which y'all don't, charge what the value absolutely is. One of the like I was struggling with the idea, like how do I, like, do I want to grow my business, right? What does
Mm.
this a business model look like? Because it's easy to get stretched really thin with the work that I do. Like when I'm coaching someone, it's just me man on man with the person, and there's only so many hours I have to do that, right? So how do I grow? And one of my mentors said to me, Tara, it's okay if you want to be a Ferrari. He said, Ferrari
Mm.
dealers don't sell a ton of Ferraris. They know they're not going to sell a ton of Ferraris, and they know that a good number of people coming in to look at Ferraris, when they get the price tag, will say no. And yet, they only have to sell a few Ferraris, and that's their year. Right. So if you want to be, priced at a luxury level, if you want to be a certain thing, like again, choose
Yeah.
it and embrace it and go after it, recognizing how it works. So like, and
But Tara, to that point, I like the analogy. Just make sure that if you whatever your pricing strategy is, that you stay consistent.
mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
so you are not, to your, like you said, if you're going in a Ferrari dealership, they are not going to have a Toyota RAV4 on that floor. I don't even know if it'll be any within 5 miles of it. And so you just have to make sure you stay consistent, because
Mm-hmm.
you also can confuse your customer. You can confuse the marketplace if you are pricing yourself at one level and then the next time you go out, you're pricing yourself at the
Mm-hmm.
other. Understand that Walmart made quadrillions of dollars by being the low price leader.
Right.
And if that's your strategy, stick with it and roll hard with it. But just make sure you understand that when you start jumping to different price categories and different pricing strategies, you're also confusing your customer if you are keeping the same type of customer, if you're staying in that lane. So
Well,
with that
I
said, go
well, hold
ahead.
on. Like I love that. What you made me think of is, wherever the pricing tier, kind of where you choose to land, also impacts not just who your customers are, but what you go after.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, RFPs, requests for proposals that come out of either government or really big organizations that have big procurement departments. I have to say, I don't win a lot of those RFPs. Like anything where it tends to be like a lot of information and heavily based solely on price, I tend not to get those RFPs. Now, what I am proud to say is oftentimes I present for those RFPs, get turned down for the RFPs, and then we call back for different work that isn't specific to the RFP, um, because they like what kind of what I can do and what I offer, but it just doesn't fit that model, and I'm okay
Mhm.
with that, right? So I don't, from a sales perspective, don't pursue a lot of big kind of institutional RFPs because it's just shown that my pricing doesn't necessarily work very well in that environment, right? Or
Right.
even my structure of operations. And so you just have to kind of know, think about kind of where you want to play.
And something about RFPs, because I am not a fan of them either. And at one point, I was like, I am not responding to no doggone RFP. And this one lady, she told me she had to change her mindset on them. She said, look at an RFP if you're invited to respond. Look at it as an invitation to a nice party because everybody didn't get the invitation. And even if you don't win, at least they know who you are. And like you
Mm-hmm.
just said, Tara, even if you don't win that RFP, you sometimes you get called back for the work. And when she said that, I said, she's right. Everybody does not get that chance to respond. And it was weird because sometimes some RFPs are way more intensive than others,
Mm-hmm.
but what's most important is you show up.
Mm.
You show up to the game so people know that you're there. Have your pricing the way that you decided made best for you. And don't worry about what everybody else is doing around you because everybody wants to tell you, well, you have to know what the competition is doing. I can guarantee you that if I called any consultant that does what they say I do, they will not tell me what they charge. That
No.
be them that like that lady that I had lunch with 20 years ago who thought I had slapped her mama. They would be like, this chick is tripping. No, ain't nobody gonna tell me what they charged. And it's so I think people are foolhardy when they say stuff like that.
But what I will say though is if you're going after a government RFP, particularly a federal RFP, know that a lot of those things are open disclosure. So you can
Mm-hmm.
actually go back and look in the federal databases and see, actually I've even found it just by doing Google searches, see what some of the hourly rates or what some of the fees winning bids have gotten because of the Information Act. Like, so that's another place just to get some data if you need some.
Right. And something that I think is I think everything is important, but for
All things are very important.
our audience members who are former corporate people that decided to hop out and become solopreneurs for whatever reason, don't forget your history. A lot of times when we leave corporate, it seems like we forget everything. We forget what people used to charge when they would come to you asking for work or responding to RFPs. Get that history
Hmm.
and look at what folks was charging. Look at what people were asking if you don't already have it, and just understand that you too can charge that. Because guess what? When you were sitting in the corporate walls, you saw these same proposals. And I think a lot of people forget you're the same person in the company as you are outside of it. Now, outside of it, you have a little bit more expertise. You have a little bit more history. I mean, when I left, I didn't have it. I wasn't in procurement. So I just didn't know. But if you are that person, please start looking through those files to see what people were asking. And here's another one. If you have a friend that's still working there, call them and say, hey, how much how much is so and so charging? You don't even need to know the name, but how much are you all on average paying for coaching
Hmm.
consulting? How much is that costing on average? So I'm just trying to get an idea. Your friends are usually the ones that'll help you. If they say, well, I don't feel too comfortable, that is not your friend.
That is not your friend.
That is
You
not your
know,
friend. Hang up
Nara, I do that.
immediately.
I do that all the time.
Mhm,
For like if I'm going into a new industry, right? So I'm having an opportunity in a completely different industry. Like I know, for example, that entertainment is going to pay a lot different than standard operations, right?
mhm.
Finance, kind of what seems normal for finance and for tech may be very, very different than what feels right for nonprofit, right? And so as I'm assessing things, I'm constantly I'll pick up the phone and call a friend and say, hey, do you know what typically you like someone would pay
Mhm.
in this industry? at this level. And, like I said, they may not know, but if anybody that says, I'm not going to tell you,
That's not your
that's
friend.
that is not your friend.
Not at all. So, Tara, as we think about wrapping this up, what is the one piece of advice that you would share with our audience about pricing themselves, what to charge? What do you think?
Ooh, as much as possible. No,
Mhm.
that's not advice.
You back at
Um,
as much as the market will bear. Who is
the
bear?
market was there.
Uh,
Um, no, I mean, I think for me, like the best advice that I can give you is be a little uncomfortable. Like it's
Mhm.
always a little bit uncomfortable when to lay out a price because you're looking at it, and you're like, is anyone going to pay this? And you realize, yes, someone's going to pay that. Someone's already charging that. It's like it's okay to ask, and like, hey, Marilyn, don't listen. This like, look, it's just between me and y'all. If you actually go and present a price and they say that's too much, we can't do it, you can always say, okay, let me see what I can do. Maybe I can change the scope and make it smaller. Like there's a general fear that there's a general
Oh,
fear that I know, but don't listen. There's a
oh.
fear that if I come too high, I will lose the opportunity altogether, ever and ever again. This is not, you're not going to close a door, right? State your price, say it with your chest, say it with pride, and know that no matter what comes out of this is not like, even a no is not the end of a relationship. Even a no is not the end of a business opportunity, and it's not the end of your career. I think people just are so scared of that no.
That's good. So this is something I learned to be comfortable with just in the last couple of years. When I am trying to price things, I ask the budget. What is your budget?
Yes.
Now, I have had some people say, well, I don't want to disclose that. Can you give me a range? And if you can't, that's okay as well. So number one, I'll ask. And then two, keep a spreadsheet or something. Always know what you want to take home. Sometimes you do have to kind of notch back a little bit, but don't go too far back because you'll
Mm-mm.
always be notching back and then you'll be comfortable always notching back on your price. But number one thing I do is I ask, well, what is your budget? Most of the time people
Mhm.
tell me. And just understand this,
Yeah.
when they tell you what that budget number is, that's not really the budget number, but it gives you a ballpark. So,
That's fair.
yeah. So now, listen, it has been such a pleasure sharing this information with you all and always talking to you, Miss Tara. Listen, and if you guys have any comments, please share those comments with us. If you have any ideas of subjects that you like to hear from us, also share that information with us. Tara, you got anything else to tell our people?
Yeah, we love spending this time with y'all, and again, want to spend more of it. Please, please, please do it the old-fashioned way. We're a couple of business owners. We like referrals. Tell your friends about us. Like, share the
Yeah.
wealth, because
Mhm.
if you haven't heard anything that we've said, the idea of being transparent, of sharing what you know, is the key to a community. That's why we don't have a problem talking about this openly with each other and with you. And if this is a resource that's valuable, pass it on because someone else needs to hear this. And we just can't wait to talk to you next time.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the Solo CEOs, please share this podcast with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest, you can follow us on LinkedIn or Instagram at the Solo CEOs, or stop by our website for videos, resources, and other great stuff. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.